Let's go ahead and let's migrate a Next.js instance into a completely static HTML so then we can upload the files into IPFS and run a completely decentralized web application. In this first tutorial, what we are going to be focusing on is the components that I have to migrate from Next.js into static HTML. Or let me rephrase, the components that we need to move from Next.js to static HTML. That includes one, the styling, obviously, because we are going to be adding background colors, we're going to be adding icons, all that information that we have from Next.js, we have to make sure that we port that into the static HTML project. We are not installing any framework. All we are doing is we are building one folder called static frontend, and we are going to be adding the CSS style page. We are also going to port over the functions that are running on the Next.js instance onto the static HTML. As we know, in Next.js, we are going to usually end up with either JS files or TypeScript files. One of those two, right? And we are going to be porting that over. But here's the heavy lifting of converting from Next.js to static HTML. If I was exporting functions that were meant to be attached to buttons, to functions inside the HTML object, I have to make sure that I grab those functions and I put them on a JS file. And we are also going to be working with CDNs. One of the items that we have to invoke as the page is loading, it's going to be the Bootstrap styling, which means that I have to bring that Bootstrap module in my static site. So then I can use the CSS files that were meant to be used with Bootstrap. So what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be adding a script that is just going to invoke that via a CDN. Once we get that in place, all the pages that we developed in the Next.js project, we are going to be converting that to static HTML, which means that I have to work with all the functions that will render the HTML objects. If you remember on the first video, we are going to be working with the HTML DOM manipulation, okay? We are going to be doing all that. A lot of the items that we are going to be working with are copy and paste, basically, but there's certain things that we are going to be building, and the way that we are going to be building that, it's going to be slightly different from Next.js. Don't worry, I got you. We're going to go very quick on a static HTML site, okay? We're gonna call this the index.html page, and we will just build a very basic HTML site, and we will start building all the buttons, all the cards, everything that you see right now on screen in static HTML. Enough with the talking, let's go ahead, let's make this happen. Okay, so the end goal in this video is to get the web front end all the way to this particular stage where we have the background, we got all the graphical components, we have this animation video, we have also the card ready to start displaying values out of our Web3 application. So we have to build all this. We have to make this completely static, meaning that I'm not going to be running any Next.js instance. This is going to be strictly static. I just have a single index.html file, and that should load the entire component of this web application, okay? First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open Visual Studio Code, okay? And I'm going to show you the difference between the Next.js instance and our static front end. Right now, I have a static front end folder completely empty. There's nothing inside this folder. What we are going to do first is that we are going to copy what we need from the Next.js instance as far as the styling goes. So as we know, CSS under the styles folder, we are going to see all the CSS style sheets, okay? So what I want to do, I am going to head over the static front end. This is a completely empty folder. I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call this CSS. And now inside the CSS folder, I am going to copy and paste all the style sheets that I have inside my styles folder in this Next.js project, okay? Let's copy it, not cut. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go ahead and paste it. Awesome. So I have all the styles that I need. And as a matter of fact, I can consolidate. I don't need to invoke too many imports. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this stake style here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to send it to custom. I'm just going to paste it right here. So stake style is here. So now I can effectively delete this. I don't no longer need that. As a matter of fact, I am not going to import any navbars. So if we take a look at our project, there's no navbar. So let me go ahead and delete the navbar, okay? So I'm just going to delete this because I don't need that. And everything else looks okay. So we have all the CSS components ready to go. Now the next step that I'm going to do, I'm going to build that index.html file. So I'm going to just call this index.html. Got it? Awesome. So now we're going to go back into the Next.js project. Wait, there's some graphical elements that I have to display in the front page. So in this case, I got to make sure that I show the image logo. So what I'm going to do, I am going to bring the public folder where I have all of those files. Okay, let me go ahead and do that. So if we take a look at public, you can see that we have a couple of files, right? So we have all the token logos. Let me just expand this a little bit more. You can see here that I got this logo, this one, this, and I think I even have the video. The video that we're seeing in the front page, this right here is also that file. So what I'm going to do, same thing. I am going to grab that. I'm going to call that folder again. Let's build that new folder. It's going to be public. And now inside the folder, all I'm going to do, once again, I don't need the Vercel because that's for Next.js, right? So all I'm going to be copying, it's going to be the files that I need for my project. Copy, and then I'm going to go over the public folder. I'm going to go ahead and paste. And sure enough, we got those files. So we'll have to come back onto the Next.js project. So now let's go ahead and do the following. I am going to initialize the index.html by declaring this .type. This is how we do it, HTML. Just press tab and you should be good. Let's open the HTML section. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type HTML. Okay. Now inside here is where all the magic is going to happen. I have to, first of all, initialize all the parameters inside this type of HTML page. All the information that needs to be sent to the browser so the browser understands and interprets the syntax that we are going to be providing, or the language in HTML5 that we're just going to provide. We are going to be declaring this language right here. This is going to be English, EN. And now inside this particular section, we are going to be invoking that metadata. So it's going to be meta. Inside meta, then I can go ahead and define what the attributes are going to be for this page. So I'm going to put it here, and I'm just going to go very briefly on this. It's literally specifying Unicode. Then it's going to define the initial scale, how is the website is going to be rendered, how is the scale aspect of the graphical display in the browser. How are you going to tell the browser to render this particular web application? It's very straightforward. Okay, now here comes the fun part. First thing I'm going to provide is the title, and this is not the title that we are going to be displaying in the front end. This is a title that is going to be displayed in the browser tab. So when we open this site, it's going to show that in the tab. Okay, so I'm going to say title. And we're just going to call this N2Dex staking DeFi staking. Okay, I'm going to Control S. Okay, and now the next thing that I got to do, and we're going to see that once I run the file, you're going to see this on the tab. Okay, so now the next thing that I have to invoke, it's going to be the Bootstrap styling. Okay, and here's where we start using CDNs. So in Next.js, I have to install that package using npm. So if we go to the Bootstrap page, you're going to see here that you have to install it with npm, but we're not going to do that because this is a static HTML site. However, you can also use a CDN. You can see it right here. Okay. So you can use CDNs, and that's what we're going to do because this is going to be a static HTML site. So in my case, I can either invoke this as a link, which is just going to invoke this particular minimal CSS package or CSS style sheet that is going to allow me to render the Bootstrap objects, okay, or the Bootstrap styling. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this, right? And we can use also the script function. So it's just going to do that script option, and we are going to do that later on, okay? But for styling purposes, all I need to do is this, okay? So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to the index page. I'm going to Control V, and I'm going to be pasting that, okay? So now we got the CDN pointing to the Bootstrap style page, okay? You can see here, it's all we need. So if we take a look at the page, the background is like a bluish color. And if we go to our CSS style page, and this is going to be the page color, the background color. And you can see it's been defined here in the body. Once I open the body in HTML, then the background color is just going to be invoked because we're just importing this CSS style sheet, okay? So let's go back. Now I can go ahead and import my CSS style sheets, okay? Because now I have the package to go and use my styles with Bootstrap, okay? So now what we're going to do, we're going to say link, okay, type, and we are going to define this to be a text CSS. So we are telling the browser, hey, this is, by the way, this is a style sheet, a CSS style sheet. We can say real, and then we can just define here style sheet. Awesome. Okay, now we have to tell the source, where are we going to find that style sheet that we are going to be importing once the browser renders the page. We're going to be calling href, right? And we are going now to be pointing to that folder. So we're going to say CSS, that's the folder, and you can see that it's auto-completing. So it's going to be CSS, right? And now I am going to be importing the first one. The first one's going to be custom, okay? And we're done with the first one. Well, guess what? We have 3 more to go. So let's go ahead and copy this entire link, and we are just going to paste 3 more. Now the only difference that I have to replace here are their names. So it's going to be global, home, module, CSS, and then finally it's going to be model, okay? Cool. Awesome. So we have effectively called the CDN for Bootstrap. After I loaded that Bootstrap style sheet CDN, I can now load my own custom style sheets, okay? Once we're done with that, we are going to combine all this. We are going to be combining all this section inside the head of the HTML file. We are defining anything that is going to be pre-rendered or pre-built before we actually render the body of the HTML page. Is where the page is going to be constructed once the browser renders the file, okay? Very simple. We're going to say head, and then I'm going to close that right here. Okay, so we're going to say cut, paste, and we are done with the head section. By the way, I can use the head section to load more scripts. I can load a JS file that will have functions that we need to load before we can load the HTML section, because probably the HTML section is going to require those objects already loaded so then it can continue loading the site, the page, okay? The next thing that I'm going to be declaring is the actual HTML page. Here's the fun part. We're going to say body, right? And inside this body is where we load the entire HTML page. So the first thing I'm going to be declaring is going to be main. So this is going to be the main section on the page. And inside main, I can define the style sheets. I can define the background. I can define the font. But here's the thing. With the font, if I want to use a custom font, I need to load that before I can load the page, okay? So I have to make sure that it's loaded over here before I can actually load the page. So for that, if we take a look back on our Next.js project, let's go back, and we go over the pages, we go over app, we are using the San Francisco Pro font. I have to find somehow the CDN for this particular font so that I can load that also as the user is rendering the page. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go right here, do a quick Google search. I'm going to type SF Pro font. I'm going to say CDN, okay? And we can see it right here. You can see already that there's actually the link. We just need to copy that. We'll copy that link, and we should be able to use the SF Pro display font in the site. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go ahead and paste it. Let's paste it right below the Bootstrap CDN import, okay? So there you go. Now we have the SF Pro display, we got also the Bootstrap, and we got all the style pages that we already imported from Next.js, okay? So now, with that said, now we can continue building that main page. Now we have to see how did we build that in Next.js so that we can mimic the same style here. And you can see here, if we go over the index page in Next.js, we have the container and we got the font family, SF Pro display, okay? So we probably have to invoke this as well in the static site. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say class name, or we can say class, and we're going to say container, okay? And then we can say style, similar as Next.js. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try my best to put it side by side so you can see it better. So you can see here that we are starting with container. So we are effectively adding container, and now style. Or in static HTML, I'm not going to have the same format to do style. Slightly similar, okay? In style here, we are going to say style, and then inside style, we're going to say font. And you can see that it's auto-completing. We're going to say font family. And inside here, I got to put this with quotations. I'm going to say SF Pro display. You can see here, if we take a look at the Next.js instance, it's slightly similar. This one, it's formatted in camel case, where this one has a dash and it's all lowercase. But then once we invoke the font family, it's going to be literally the same. It's going to be the quotation and then the name of the font, okay? And that should be it, okay? Now we know that the container has been mapped with the style that we want, and then we have the font, okay? So let's continue. Now the next thing I have to migrate into the static HTML is going to be this particular section along with the title that we see at the top, which is DeFi staking pools. So let's do this. So we want to make this title, and we also want to add this IPFS logo. So what I can do with the IPFS logo is I can actually find the source of this IPFS logo and just use that to invoke that during that loading time, which means that I don't have to also store that in the files that we are going to be uploading to IPFS. I am going to find that logo somewhere. What better place than to go to the actual IPFS page? And there you go, the logo is right here. So how do I just call this logo into my project? I can right click and I can say open image in new tab, okay? So I'm going to right click on the image, I'm going to open the image in a new tab, and you can see the logo is right here. All I have to do is I have to copy that URL, right? And we are going to be bringing that into our project, okay? So let me just paste it here, right? I'm just going to leave it there, and we're going to use that right now, okay? It's right here, and by the way, I'm just literally copying the same style that we have in Next.js into the static project, okay? So we are just adding the row, we're calling this a deflex style, and then we're going to align the items. This is all front-end UI design, okay? Now with that, I am going to close this, and inside here, I can now create my sub-objects. The first object is going to be the logo, and then the next object is going to be the title, okay? So if we go back to the page, you're gonna see that the logo is gonna be first, then the title. And then after that, we will have the video that is currently playing, okay? So it's gonna be IPFS and then the title, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. We are going to create the grid, and then from there, we are just going to set some margins. This is all styling, okay? So bear with me on this one. I am not by any means a front-end UI guy, but I'm doing my best, okay? So now I can finally invoke the object. I'm gonna say image, right? And now I can specify the source. What's the source? The URL that we just found, okay? So I'm gonna cut that, I'm gonna add this here, and now we are going to then define the size, because if I don't define any size, it's just gonna show that big logo, and we want to make sure that we shorten that, okay? And we can just keep trying, okay, until we get the right width, okay? So in my case, the other project had a width of 90, and I have a little bit of opacity, it was like 0.09. So now we're just gonna close this here, and we have officially the IPFS logo in this HTML page. Now the next thing that I gotta do, it's going to be the title, DeFi staking pools, right? So DeFi staking pools, I gotta define that. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a header of 3. We're going to be defining the margin. So let's say we got a margin X of 3, and then let's call this DeFi staking pool, okay? Now I'm wondering how would all this look, okay? So let's take a look and see if everything is looking okay, okay? So we're going to be comparing that against what we expect to see. So I'm gonna Control S, and then I'm supposed to see the logo then the title. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. You can see it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it with Firefox. And sure enough, awesome. Okay, so we got, and you can see here that that was a page that I found the logo. I'm just importing that. So if I right click and I open a new image in a new tab, it should also find the same, same URL because we're just storing that in HTML. And you can see right here, this is looking great. We have this bluish background and then we have the title. Awesome. So we have effectively converted that. Now let's do the following. Let's say, oh, and by the way, you can see here that we have the title. This is, let me close this right here. You can see the other project has DeFi all in caps. I am missing the E, but that's fine. But you can see here that we have the title. If you remember where we configured that, it was in the meta section. So in the meta section, I declared the title, and that's what we're going to see in the tab, okay? Beautiful, awesome, so we got this. Now, the next thing that we have to add is going to be that video, okay? The video is located in the public folder. Remember, we copied that at the beginning. So if we go back into the public folder, banner vid. So banner vid is going to be that file. So let me go back into index, basically build another section. So we're gonna close this section right here because remember, we declared this open div. I wanna close that, I'm gonna say div, okay, so it has been closed. And now we are going to be declaring the other section that is going to show the video. Okay, so now let me go ahead and paste it right here. I'm gonna show you what this is. This is basically the video element in HTML, and it's going to set autoplay, which means that it's just auto starts to play once the page has been loaded. If there's audio muted, I don't want to hear anything, and loop it. Just continue to play it as soon as it ends. It just continue to play in, and inline, meaning that I don't want to see any like options to stop the video or anything like that. Any inline media buttons to manage the video itself, okay? And then I'm going to be specifying the source, and then I want to make sure that the video aspect is like rounded on the edges and all that. And I'm going to define this to be a type of video, WebM format. And now I am going to be pointing to .public, which is this folder right here. And then inside that folder, you're going to find this to be your video file, okay? So if I Control S, right, go back, let me refresh. Sure enough, look at that. We are in a very good spot right now. Now what we're going to do, we're going to build that card. And this is where we are going to work with HTML DOM manipulation, okay? And the reason why is we have to work with HTML DOM manipulation is because this is not something that I'm manually going to be building in HTML. Let's say the platform is going to have 3 pools, 4 pools. I am not going to go onto my HTML object or HTML sections right here and keep adding div. No, we want this to be completely dynamic. If the DeFi staking smart contract has 3 pools, I want to make sure that it auto-generates additional cards, right? In order for us to do that, I have to work with HTML DOM manipulation, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So for that, I have to do the following. I am going to be declaring a div element, but that element, it's not going to have anything below it. It's just going to be identified with an ID. That ID, I am going to use that ID to then declare or build the objects using HTML DOM. Okay, so we are effectively going to close this here, and now we're going to create that element. It's going to be div, and I'm going to say class. Okay, so now we are going to create div, and we are going to just identify this to be pools. Okay, so with that name, I am going to build a JS file that is going to find that div element or document element by ID. And it's going to look for pools, and inside here is where I'm going to keep building more items. And you're going to see this. You might not understand it now, but it's going to make a lot of sense once I start building the HTML DOM. We are going to do that right now. So let me go ahead and close it right here. I'm going to say close, and boom, that's it. That's all we have to do. So in order for me to be able to properly nest every single item inside this card, I need to determine the order that I'm going to be appending the objects that I'm going to be building by using the DOM. I am going to do a quick whiteboard session. I'm going to go through that, okay? Check this out, okay? So we have this card, right? This card has the following. It has this particular breakout right here, right? It has another one. So basically there's divisions. 1, 2, it has 3, it has 4, 5, 6, and finally it has 7. And a normal HTML syntax, I will be building it this way. Let's take a look and see the NextJS HTML section that builds this entire object. So if I'm going to go back onto my Visual Studio Code, I'm going to show you the NextJS project. Okay, so you can see here, and this is another thing that we are going to be working, but not now. You're going to see, which is going to be slightly different when we do this in a DOM method, right? Where we have to build these objects dynamically. So this is just like a loop, right? We're just using a map to loop through every single pool that we have available based on what the smart contract is giving us. So let's say we have 3 pools. That means I have to generate 3 cards like the one that you saw right now, right? So in order for me to do that in normal HTML, I am going to, do this div. I'm gonna add this class names. I'm going to set some attributes, the styling, everything, right? Inside this div, we are going to declare another. I'm going to call this a subdiv, but it's basically another object that is going to be appended inside this parent div. Okay, and we have what is called the parent and the child div. The child is the member div that is the member div or the member object that is inside the parent, or it's going to be built using DOM and will be appended to the parent, okay? I am going to show you this, and it's going to make a lot of sense. So if we go onto this whiteboard right here, let's not focus on this right now. Let's do a very simple 3-item card, okay? So we are going to build this card object, right? This card object is going to have a background, blue background. Inside this card object, we are going to be building another card object, right? And this one, it's just going to be, let's put it white color, okay? And then we are going to do a second one, right? And this second one, it's going to be color red, okay? Let's just make that as our example. Each card that we see inside this big card is going to be the child object, and this one will be the parent, okay? So in order for me to build inside this child object, I have to append whatever I'm going to generate or I'm going to create using the DOM, okay? So with that said, if I want to add, let's say I'm going to be adding a button, say that we're going to be adding a button inside that child element, okay? And this button is going to have the name stake, put it this way, right? And then we're going to have another button right here, different color, and this one is going to say unstake, okay? Let's just say that this is unstake, okay? Now I have to build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different DOM elements, okay? How do we do this? So in order for me to be able to build this entire thing, I have to first define the first one, okay? So I'm going to say constant, and we're going to declare this to be parent card, okay? And we are going to define this to be create element, and this element is going to be what? It's going to be whatever I want to create, okay? In this case, I want to create a card, okay? So this must be an HTML element. So I'm going to say card, right? I'm going to close it down, okay? Now that I did this, I can create another item below that, which is going to be another card, okay? So check this out. I just want to make it very simple for you to understand. So I'm going to make another card, and this one is going to be child card, and let's say 1 because we have 2, okay? Now with that said, I'm going to do another card, and it's going to be card number 2, okay? We have done card number 2, okay? Now that I did 3 cards, so I did the parent card, which is this one right here. By the way, I can do this. I'm going to say this is blue, so this is the blue card. Then this is going to be the white card, so then it's a more identifiable, and then we're going to have the red, so we're going to call this red, right? So we're going to do red card, we're going to do white card, and we're going to do blue card. Okay, so now that we know that we have all those 3 elements created using DOM, now I need to do buttons, okay? So we're going to do button. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to do stake button, check this out, stake button, I'm just going to abbreviate this, and we are going to call this what? Button. This is just like if you were doing this on HTML. So in HTML, you do the button. I'm going to show you one, right? So let's go here. Let's go to Next.js. And if we go over button right here, you can see it right there. We're basically doing that. So if I want to make a div, I am going to create element. I'm going to call this div, okay? It's literally the same thing. And button, we're going to call this button, okay? Beautiful. So now with that said, I am going to go back. I'm going to show you. So I did the stake button. Now we are going to do the other button, which is going to be unstake button. Okay, so now what I have to do here, I have to label this to be button because we're basically making a button. I'm going to do the same thing with the second item. It's going to be also a button. Okay, so we have built the parent, we have built the child's cards, and we have built the child buttons. Okay, so in this case, the order of pendants is going to be button, card, then parent. There's only one parent, but inside that parent, we got 2 cards and 2 buttons, 1 button on each card, okay? So let's do this. I am going to associate this button onto this card, okay? So check this out. So we're going to do the following. We're going to say that this is going to be on stake, so let's just set this aside. Okay, so let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to move this all the way here because we're going to use that later. The red card is also going to be used with this. And then now we have what we need here, okay? In order for me to, first of all, add the word stake to this button, now that I created the element, now I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say stake button, okay? We're going to do dot, and we're going to type text content, okay? In this text content, we are going to add what? The actual string that we want to label the button, stake, okay? So we have done effectively this stake button, right? And we have appended that name stake by using DOM, strictly document object manipulation. Now, what I have to do, I want to add that background to be purple, okay? So what I got to do is the following. I'm going to say, once again, stake button. Now this time, how do we add a background to a button, okay? How do we do that? We use the class style, right? We use the class style, and then we define background, and then we provide either the hex value, RGB value, whichever is the case, okay? So in this case, I am going to type, stake button. I'm going to do dot. I'm going to say style, okay? and then I'm going to do dot. Once again, I'm going to call this object or this particular argument that I'm going to be modifying. Okay, so I'm going to say background. And now, what do I have to pass? I have to pass the color in hex. Or if you're just using the buttons provided already with Bootstrap, then you find what value is purple, and then you can use it that way. So in my case, I can either pass this as hex, and whatever is the case, I'm just making something up here, or you can just type purple, right? And that will effectively add the background to the button purple, okay? Okay, so we have effectively done the button. We have created the button using straight DOM, okay? Now, I have to do the following. I am going to insert the button inside the white card. How do I do that? Simple. Check this out. I am going to do the following here. I am going to call now the white card. I'm going to say white card, okay? And now inside the white card, I am going to append child, okay? We are going to be appending child. What do we pass as a parameter is the actual button stake, okay? We have effectively nested or appended the stake button inside the white card. Now, what I got to do is the following. Now I have to append the white card to the parent, which is the blue card, okay? So check this out. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to say blue card, append child, and what am I going to be appending? White card. So it's going to be white card. There you go. Now we have effectively appended all those three items, okay? We have appended the button to the white card to this parent blue card. I still have another card and another button. So let's go ahead and do that, right? So I'm going to move this all the way here to the side, and let's do it again. So now we already know this, okay? Now we're going to do red card, and inside red card, we have the unstake button. So we have to first style the unstake button, right? We have created the element, but we haven't added the context or anything like that. So we're going to say unstake button, right? And then we're going to tell text content, and what are we going to pass? The label, unstake, okay? Beautiful. Now we have to add the background color. So it's going to be unstake button, and then we're going to say style, same as the other one, and then dot, and then background. And we are just going to tell green. Beautiful, okay? Cool. After we are done with that, guess what we need to do? We have to append, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to say red card, append child, and then we are going to pass that. We're going to pass unstake button, all right? And finally, we are going to be appending the red card to the blue card, which is the parent element. So check this out. We're going to say blue card, once again, dot append child, and then we're going to say red card. There you go. Here's what is very important for us to understand. For us to understand, the order here is extremely important, okay? Because that will define the position that will be assigned or it will be placed upon each object that we are generating using DOM. So if I do this, I'm just going to add this over here. I'm going to say, right? So if I decide to append first the red card, unstake button, then I append the red card to the blue card first, then this card will be placed before this card. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that we follow this order, right? So I'm going to do the following. I am going to make sure that the order that I'm going to be appending objects using DOM is the right order, okay? And this is literally a high level, so then you can understand how are we building using DOM. Now that we understand the order of inheritance, or at least we have an idea of the order of inheritance, now we have to build this according to what we had in Next.js. So in Next.js, we have a bunch of div elements, so we have a lot of div elements generated, and we have class name. And it's very simple. All we need to follow is the same order, okay? Check this out. What I'm going to do, I'm going to build one section, and we'll see the section render when we open the index.html, and then I'm just going to continue building the entire structure. At the end of the entire structure, I am going to be showing you the entire inheritance. So we are going to be appending objects against objects against objects, okay? Let's take a look here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create another folder. This folder is going to be called JS because it's going to store all the JavaScript files that I need to load when the browser loads the index.html, okay? So now we are going to create a new file. This file is going to be called pool.html. I'm going to say JS, okay? Beautiful. Now inside here, we are going to first we have to find the parent element that is going to be displayed in the index.html page. What is that parent element? Okay, let's take a look at that. Remember, pools, okay? So the first thing I gotta do is I have to build a constant. I have to create a constant that is going to be calling that ID. It's gonna be get document by ID, and then we'll find pools, okay? So let's do that. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna declare that right here. I'm gonna say constant, and we can define this to be pools, okay? And we are going to say equals document get element by ID, and then what am I looking for? Pools, okay? If we go back into the index.html, that is what I'm looking for, okay? Now, everything that I'm going to build, that is going to be built using DOM, is going to be at the end appended to pools, because that's what I'm going to be displaying in the front end, okay? So this is literally the last thing, right? This is like the parent of the parent of the parent. This is literally a parent element that is going to nest all the elements behind it, okay, or below it. So with that said, I am going to do the following. let's start. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to build this entire card that we see right here, the black card that we see on the background here with that black color. What we are going to do, we are going to head to the Next.js project. We're going to go onto the index.js, and then we will find that section that is generating this particular object. Okay, so check this out. Let's go back here. I'm going to find the Next.js project. We're going to find that right here. Okay, so we see the video. This is like the top portion of the page, and inside the pool DB map, we are actually building those objects. Okay, so let's grab this entire div section here where it's declare. We're just going to copy this whole thing. We're going to go back onto the index, to the static page. Okay, I'm just going to paste it here. It's for me to be able to copy and paste easily. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to say constant card section. Okay, we're just going to build this to be the card section. I'm going to say equals the element. So I'm going to say create element. Okay, and the element that we are going to be creating is going to be what? It's going to be a div. It's going to be a div, okay? So we're just going to create that element div. Now that I have that card section built, I am going to add all the information that we had in the Next.js project. So I'm going to say card session, okay? We're going to now call class, okay? So remember, in Next.js, we have class name, but in static HTML, we have class. It's literally the same thing. So we're going to say class, and we are now going to say equals, and then we're going to open that. We can say double here, and we're going to grab this whole thing right here. I'm going to copy that, right? Then we are going to paste that inside here. Boom. So we finished with that. Now what I got to do, grab this whole thing, delete that. Now the only thing left that we have to add onto this particular section, the div, is going to be that background color, the black background color. So with that said, I already declared the class. Now let me go ahead and declare the background. So I'm going to say card section once again. I'm going to say card section. Now we're going to say style. Remember, we're calling style first, right? Then after we called style, we're going to say background, and we are just going to find this value. Okay, so we're going to copy that. I'm going to paste it right here, and then we're going to delete this. There you go. Awesome. All right, so we have done the first section. We have done that card, the black card, without anything. It's just the card, and you can see that we have declared the background, and we have added all the elements inside the class, declare as a DOM. Okay, now what do I have to do to show this in the front end? It's going to be appended to pools, which is then the element that we are passing from the actual index.html page. So whatever is inside here is just going to be rendered, okay? Let's go back. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to say pools, append, child, okay? And we are going to append what? Card section. You see how cool that is? Control S, and let's do the following. I'm going to refresh this index.html, and nothing is going to show, but I want to do this on purpose because we're missing one thing. Don't worry, you'll see it. Okay, let's go. Just go back. This is our static index.html file. I'm going to right click. I'm going to open it with my Firefox. And you can see, as I told you, nothing is going to show. Why is that? It's because I haven't called the script to load when we load the index.html page. I am going to fix that. Check this out. I'm going to go back, and we are going to head over here below the body. Okay, I have a section right here below the body that allows me to load this. Okay, so what I can do the following. I'm going to say script. I'm going to declare script, right? And inside script, I'm going to declare source. I'm going to say source. And what I have to do now, I have to tell the browser where is that located? Where is that file that I need to load located? Okay, so when I say JS, that's the folder. Okay, so we're going to call this JS / and you can see that it auto-completes pool html.js. So let me go ahead and make sure that this is saved. Okay, this has been saved. And now I have to tell the browser that this script treat it as a JavaScript. So the browser is going to use that to determine how is it going to load that file. Okay, so I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say type. I'm going to say here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to declare this to be text JavaScript. Okay, once I do that, I'm going to close this thing and done. Okay, now let's save it, Control S, and let's take a look. Now that I load this and I refresh, I still don't see the element. One thing that I can do to confirm that it's a problem inside the HTML file or in the project itself is that I can grab this. I'm going to open an incognito window and try it again. Maybe it's something in the cache. Okay, now that I confirm that it's not the browser, I'm going to say F12. I'm going to go to the console, and it's saying create element. It's not defined. Let's take a look at that. Let's go back. Why is that? And it's something that I completely overlooked. We are working with document get element by ID here, which means that we are also working with a DOM element. Okay, so what I'm going to do is grab this and paste it here. I want to save it, and that should do it. Okay, let's go back and let's see here. So I forgot about the document, so I'm going to just do it right here. I'm going to close it down, close it here, and let's go ahead and reopen it. And let me not open the other one so we are not confused. Now let's confirm that we're not seeing that error. Okay, we are not seeing the error, which is good. Now what I have to confirm is that the browser is actually rendering those files. It's loading that pool HTML file. And we can definitely see a lot of things being loaded, but then let me see the file, static front end. And yes, indeed, I can see the browser is actually pulling that information here. It's not loading it. So let's see why that is, okay? And the reason why it's not showing anything is because we probably have to add something inside of it, okay? So not a problem. I'm going to take care of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build the first element inside that card, which is going to be the first section in the staking pool. So if we go back, I'm going to go back to the Next.js project. As a matter of fact, I'm going to copy this entire thing right here. The entire pool map, I'm just going to copy this whole thing right here, right? I'm going to copy it. Then we are just going to use that as our reference to build the file. So I'm going to say static front end, and we're going to go here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add this as a comment, right? I'm going to say here, paste that entire section. So we're not affected by this, okay? And then we have everything that we need. Okay, so let me scroll up, and we now can see that, remove the spaces, and with nothing, cool, awesome. We see that we have this, which is fine. Now we have to add the first sub-item, which is going to be this grid. And then inside this grid, we'll have the stake. Then it's going to be calling the particular token ID, which you're going to see. You're going to see because this is a small database that we have to pass. So then those elements are also rendered, okay? So what I got to do now, I'm going to say the following. I'm going to create another element, right? And we're going to call this grid 1, okay? So we have a couple of grids, right? We can call this grid 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, okay? So let's go back and right here, right? So what I'm going to do, before I even append this child, I have to build the other elements. Else, if I append this child first, when I load the page, it's not going to load the other items. It's going to load this first. We don't want that. We want to make sure that we load everything that is inside first. And the last thing we want to load is going to be the external piece and the parent element, okay? So with that said, let's go here. I am going to build another constant, and we call this constant card grid 1, okay? And now we are going to say document, create element, and we are also going to be declaring this to be div, okay? Now inside here, we're going to say card grid 1, and now we have to define the class, okay? We're going to say equals, and equals to what? Let's just scroll up and let's grab this information, right? And we're going to add that inside. You see where I'm going, right? Digrid col2 margin x3, okay? Beautiful, so we have done this. Now inside this grid element, we are going to be building this entire section, okay? Which means that I have to create another element, but instead of div, it's going to be h6, heading 6, and then heading 3. So let's do heading 6, and let's do heading 3, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Heading 6, so let's go ahead and build that. So we have done this. Now let me take advantage of this. Paste it right here. I'm going to say grid 1, header 6, okay? Let's just make that in. But then this div element is going to be h6, okay? Inside here, right? Remember, we are now going to be adding the parameters or all the information for that particular element or object, okay? For grid 1 header 6, we are now going to define the class, and let's find out what information do we have, if anything on the class. We don't have any class. Okay, so we don't have any class. So in my case, I have to now define this inside there, okay? So this is going to be the content. So I'm going to say copy, right? I'm going to copy this entire line. And now we're going to say here, we're going to say instead of class, we're going to say text content. And now we are going to open this and we're going to say this. Here's the thing. This is not a string. This is actually an object that I'm going to be opening and I'm going to be reading first before I render this page, which means that I have to build another JS file with all the attributes that I need to call inside here. For now, let's put it aside. We're just going to build the object so that we can see the HTML piece. Then I'm going to go back and we'll work with the actual variables because we're going to be calling variables inside an array because we're going to be having a dynamic page. This page is going to be displaying stuff that is going to be constantly changing. So we're not going to be doing static stuff on things that could be changed, right? So if we're talking about a liquidity pool, we're talking about a staking pool, that element could change, okay? So with that said, I'm going to say stake and earn just to test, just to make sure that we can see stuff, okay? Awesome. So we have grid header 6. Now with that, I can say the following. I should be able to nest or append this element, grid 6, onto the card, grid 1, okay? So what we're going to do is the following. We're going to call card grid 1, append child, okay? What are we appending? We are appending grid 1, header 6, okay? Beautiful. After we did that, now I have to append card grid 1 onto the card section because this is the first section in the card, right? Which means that I have to append the first grid. This is the first grid inside this card section, which is the card section with the background and all that, okay? So what I got to do now, I'm going to say here, card section, append child. You see what I'm appending? I'm appending stuff on top of the other, on top of the other. Like whatever is the object that is inside the most, then I have to start working my way out of there, right? I have to start appending outside of that element all the way to the parent, okay? So now I'm going to be appending the element, which is going to be card grid 1, okay? And finally, what do we see right now? Now under pools, which is the global div object, we are appending the card section. Now let's take a look. Let's go ahead and Control S, and let's refresh this entire section, okay? We see something. Cool. You can see it right here. It's small, but we can definitely see it, okay? So it's actually working. So we now have the first card right here, which shows stake and earn. So that means that we are effectively nesting the elements inside the card, okay? And we have created that black background card. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the second column, okay? And at some point, I'm just going to continue on my own because this is just going to be, okay, add append, okay, add append, and then check until everything is set. I just want you to get the idea of how do you nest stuff, and you start building using document object model. So I did the first one. Let me go ahead and do the second one, okay? So the second one, and we can see it right here, the second one is going to be the logos, okay? So for that, I have to work now with that database, okay? Why? Because the logos are located inside the public folder. So that means I have to run that element, then fetch the file that is going to load the logo so that we can display that in the front end. Okay, so check this out. This is another section that I have to build with the document element, and then I am going to be calling that item, that file. It's just like if I was creating an image in HTML, then I was sourcing that image to the path of the file. It's literally the same thing. So let's go ahead back. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be importing that pool database. Okay, so we have a pool database. Let me show you the pool database. This is cool. This is cool. And it takes a little bit of practice, okay? But trust me, once you do this, then you should be able to build static sites that could be hosted in IPFS. So now you can see here in my Next.js project, I have this pool database file, right? That it shows me the logo, right? Or what's the ID of the token. That should be appended to that first column that we just built, that first div element inside the card. This is literally what we're looking for right here. That file is located in the public folder, which means that I have to tell the static site where to look for that file, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this whole thing, right? We'll just Control C, and then I'm going to go back onto my project. Bear with me. Trust me, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's good to learn this. So I'm going to say pool db.js, okay? Inside here, we are going to pass that, okay? I am going to be loading this during the runtime, okay? Which means that I not necessarily need to export this, okay? So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to declare this in the namespace. Once the element gets loaded, I should be able to use that and read the element, okay? How do we know that? Again, we're going to save this, and I have to invoke this in the index.html page, okay? In this file, I am going to be invoking that file. Remember, if I'm going to be using this, and this is one of the items that I was talking in the first video, if I am going to be using this object, right, this pool DB object inside this pool HTML, guess what? I have to load this before the pool HTML, okay? So I'm going to go back onto index. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to copy this thing. I'm going to paste it right up here. I not necessarily need this to be text JavaScript. Now I have to call this pool DB, right? It's going to be the same path, but the file name is only going to be changing here, pool DB, okay? Now when I load this page, I will be loading this first, so then I can use that, whatever it is inside that object right here, or inside this file, is going to be used here. So if we are declaring the single variable, I'm going to be able to read that variable and append or call that inside my DOM manipulation or my DOM element, okay? So with that said, I'm going to Control S, all right? And let me make sure that I save this. Now we're going to go back to the browser. I'm going to refresh. How do we know that we have loaded this successfully? I'm going to print F12. And you can already see it, right? So we are going to look here. We have pool DB, and you can see right here that has been loaded by the browser. So the browser has effectively loaded this when it loaded the page, okay? Inside pool DB, I have the path to the files, right? And here I have what I've been working with. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to do that second section, okay? So let's go ahead and do that second section, this section right here, okay? So let's go ahead back, let's go back, and let's hit the show. So under pool HTML, we have appended that, but remember, I am not going to be appending anything to the pool. That's the last item that I want to append. I want to make sure that you understand that you need to make sure that you are appending everything before you append anything here onto the last element, because that's the parent. If I append anything to the parent first, when it loads, anything else will be discarded because I already appended it to the parent. If I decide to grab this, let's say I did this. I just did this. And let's say I declare more stuff below here, right? The problem is, if I do this, and I redeclare this once again, and I append another child, it's going to duplicate because it's going to be appending anything that was already appended again. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you only append one time. So the order is very important, okay? So now what I got to do, I am going to put this all the way to the end, okay? Card section, that's fine because I am appending the first card grid. Now what I'm going to do, if you want to make everything very clean, you want to make sure that the appending section is done all the way at the end. I am going to build every HTML object first using DOM. At the end, I am going to actually append everything, which means that if you are like me, this whole section, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be done at the end. Okay, it's going to be done at the end, right? So with that said, I am going to create another grid. Remember, the first one we have done. Now, by the way, I can effectively add the name of the tokens into the stake part. So if we go back, let me show you back. Here, N to the R and N to the R. So where are we getting this information from? We are getting this information from the pool DB that we just created, okay? So if we go back here, we're going to go to pool database, and this will be the liquidity pool token and the reward token, okay? I am going to stake, then I have to close this down because this is not a string. This is now a variable, okay? Stake, I'm gonna say plus, now I'm gonna be calling that pool DB. Pool DB, remember, I can do this. Why I can do this? Because I am loading this on the browser. From the browser, once the browser has loaded this element, I can then call it here. There's not going to be any errors because this is already available in the browser section, okay, in the local cache. I have this ready. And how do I know this is the name of the element that I'm going to be calling? If we go back into the database, you can see it right here. This is the element, okay? From here, I am going to be calling the first. You see that there's two pools, right? So we got 0 in the array and we got 1. So now I got to invoke which pool am I talking about? And there's where you're going to know, this is where you're going to know how to do that map. If remember in NextJS, let's go back to NextJS, okay? We're gonna go back to NextJS. We have to do something similar in DOM. So in DOM, I have to build a loop, right? That is going to re-render everything based on the ID of my pool database, or the ID of the array. You're gonna see this now, okay? So let me go back. Let's go back into the static front page, and let's go back to the pool HTML. And now I can effectively call this pool DB. I am not building the loop yet. I just want you to see how can we call that manually, okay? I'm gonna say dot, and what is that key element inside the JSON? The key element inside the JSON is gonna be LP token, because that's the token that I'm going to be allowed to stake, okay? Now we're gonna say plus, right? Because we're working not with strings, we're working with variables. I mentioned that. Now we're gonna say open here, and now we are going to add a space, so then the name, I gotta do a space right here, so then the name has a space between stake and earn. We don't wanna leave this all together. We have to make spaces right here, okay? This is just string. And then earn, we're gonna also add a space, and now we're gonna say plus, what am I going to be placing after earn is gonna be the reward token. So I've invoked LP token. If we go back into the pool database, LP token, now I'm gonna be appending reward token. So I'm gonna copy this, let's go back here, and reward token, okay? Okay, awesome. Now that we have this, we are calling 0 because I am not calling the loop yet, okay? So I'm gonna just leave it like that. I'm gonna Control S and let's see how that looks. Let's close it here and let me refresh. We are not seeing it yet. Let's see why. Oh, there's a redirect declaration already made. Yes, because I was working with that. So in that case, I'm just gonna delete this because I just wanna test first, okay? I'm gonna Control S, let's see it again. There we go, awesome. You can see it right here, stake into the art and earn into the art, okay? Beautiful, okay, awesome. So we are reading it from the database and we're passing it here. Let's do the second one. So in the second one, I am going to grab this again, because you know I'm lazy. I'm a lazy guy. That's what my teacher used to say. I was very lazy, okay? So card grid number 2, okay? So we are going to do card grid 2 right here, as we mentioned. If we go up, card grid 2, actually, no, I'm not making the card grid yet. I am adding the logos, okay? So we're gonna be adding those logos. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna add class text white. So I'm gonna be declaring this. Oh, and this is gonna be, yeah, you don't wanna go this is how we did it in Next.js. I have to be very creative on this. Don't worry, I'm gonna show you, because I cannot just nest H3, then image inside H3. That's not how we are going to do this, okay? We are going to do the images. So let me take that out of here, right? I'm gonna take this out of here. And we're just gonna do the section here with images. With that said, I have to make sure that I have another div element, okay? So I'm gonna create another div element, and then inside that div element, we're gonna add that image, okay? So don't worry. Okay, so we are going to create that second grid. So we're gonna say card grid 2. So let me copy this, card grid 2, and this is going to be 0, but don't worry, we'll fix the indentation later. I just want to show you how do you do DOM manipulation here. So we're gonna do card grid number 2 now. And then class, we are going to add, we're gonna leave it like that, we'll play next later on with those values, okay? Now here's where we are going to build those images, okay? So in this case, instead of me adding header 6, I'm gonna do grid 1, still part of grid, no, it's actually grid 2. So grid 2, image, okay? Or logo 1, okay? Because there's 2. And now we are going to create element. What's the element? IMG, image, okay? Inside that, now I can tell the path, okay? So I'm gonna say grid logo 1, and inside this grid logo 1, we are going to be declaring source, because this is just like if I was declaring the source path of the image, okay? Okay, image, now we are going to, we don't need this. Now we're gonna do is grid 2, logo 1. Now we're going to type src source. And now the source of this file, where are we locating the source of this picture file? We know the picture is inside the public folder, which is this one right here, n to the r, right? We know that is n to the r. Now inside this particular database, we can call this liquidity pool logo, which is going to be the first logo that we're going to display. We're going to copy that, and it's going to be, this is the file that we are going to be invoking, okay? So if we go back to pool HTML, now here I can say what? I'm going to say pool DB, again, we're calling the pool database. I'm going to say 0, and then we're going to say LP logo, okay? So if we go back, that's the key of the file, LP logo, okay? Beautiful, okay? Awesome. Now I am going to do the following. I'm going to be appending this to the grid. So let's do that. Let's say now, let's do this in order, right? Remember, we were doing this all in order. Now we are going to be appending card grid to append child. What's the child? It's going to be grid to logo 1, and that should be it, okay? And finally, we are now going to be appending the second grid inside the same card. There you go. How do we do that? Easy. We're just going to call this card section. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. And now we're just going to replace this with 2. Now we are appending the first section, which is the stake earn. Now the second section is going to be the logo. Okay. And we have done only one logo out of the 2. Don't worry. I am doing it for a reason because we're going to come back and do the second one. Okay. Beautiful. So I'm going to Control S and see how stuff is looking. Okay. Remember, we have appended, grid 2, logo 1. Now with card session, card grid 1 and grid 2. Okay. So let's go back. I'm going to Control S and rephrase, and you can see here that it's loading something, but it's not showing. But at least we know that it's definitely showing something here. Don't worry, we'll fix this, okay? So what I gotta do now, I am going to find why this is not loaded, okay? So one way that I can do it is search inside the console section into the debugger, or as a matter of fact, I can check the HTML once it has been loaded, right? So if we go here under main, we go under pool, now we are going to see all this stuff that has been generated with DOM manipulation. So it's the first one, you can see it right here, it's already generated. Now the second one is looking for this, okay? So it's not able to find that. I wonder why that is. Let's see why. I know why. It's because in Next.js by default, let me see if I can expand here. Okay, in Next.js by default, and I don't know if I'm on the way, so let me see if I can just put it right here, okay? So in Next.js by default, it's able to know that this file is going to be in the public folder. But in my case, in static HTML, I cannot do that. I have to append the path, the full path, which includes the public, then the actual file name, okay? So if I go back, let's fix that real quick, okay? How do I fix this? Right here. All I have to do is now I have to say dot / and I'm going to specify that is in the public folder / and then the file name. It's going to be able to read out of the public folder and read the file. Okay, so if I go Control S, I should be able to load this one right here. Right, we have to also update the other ones. So let me go back. Let's give it a shot one more time. There you go. A little bit big. Let's fix it. All we have to do is we have to append the width element with parameter, and we should be able to modify this. Okay, what is the width that we had in Next.js? Let's see. If we look, the width is 70. So guess what? We have to add this onto the DOM element as well. So we're going to copy this. We're going to go back into my other project. Okay, we are in the project. And now here, guess what? This grid logo I can call width. Okay, so I'm going to say grid to logo 1 width. Okay, and now I'm going to say 70. Same thing as the other one. Control S, and let's take a look back. Much better. Okay, awesome. And you can see that it's not like formatting. Don't worry, this is part of the display flex, and we're doing grid. So it's going to work, okay? Okay, beautiful. So I have to finish the other one, and then what I'm going to do, I am going to append the second one, and then we are going to append this to the primary, and I'm going to finish the whole thing, okay? But I want to show you something, is because we have 2 elements inside that pool DB array. I want to show you how are we going to build all of them dynamically, okay? If I keep adding pools, then I should be able to load more cards inside this HTML object, okay? Okay, so let's do the second one. So there's 2 pictures, right? There's 2 logos. So we have done the first one. Now I'm going to generate the second one. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab this whole thing, right? We have done the first one. Let's do the second one, logo number 2. We're creating another image. This other image is going to be logo 2, right? And now here, it's going to be a different path. Let's go to the pool database, and now we should be able to add this to all my files. And yep, okay, now RW logo, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back into pool HTML, and this is going to be RW logo right here. This is the second, okay? And then I'm going to just modify this right here. And guess what I'm going to do? Card grid 2, now I got to append the second one. Okay, card grid 2, append the second one, and boom, awesome. So now we are appending those 2 to this card 2, okay? Control S, and let's go back. And there seems to be an issue here, but it's not a bad sign. So let me go back, see what it is. And we got RWD. Is it D or RW? Let's go back. RW logo. RW logo is pointing to the same. Let's go back. Pool DB RW logo. Grid 2 logo, grid 1. So I am appending grid logo 2, pool DB 0. Let me see if I saved this. Maybe I haven't. I think I did not save it. Okay, don't worry. We'll go back. I think I missed the save. There you go. Yeah, so I missed saving it. It happened. Okay. Now the question is, now that I build the second one, now what happens? How do I build the second card? Okay, well, you might say, well, I have to copy this whole thing, right? And I have to, add, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to copy and just keep duplicating because that's not efficient. What we're going to do instead, we're going to create that loop. So we are going to declare this to be a function, right? Generate pools. We're going to say generate pools, okay? Right? And now we are going to add everything that we have created right here inside that, okay? So we're just going to grab this whole thing, cut, and then I'm going to add this inside here, right? Now I have to do the following. I have to, first of all, I am going to find how many elements inside this pool array do I have, how many sections, or how many indexes. So we have to do a quick console, and that should give us the value. Then we know how many times are we going to be looping for each element that we are going to be creating. Okay, so I'm going to say it's the following. I'm going to say right here, before I even enable the function, I'm going to say console log, and then I'm going to say pool db length. Okay, I'm going to control S, and let's go back into the browser. I'm going to press F12, just lower it right here, and we're going to say the console, and let's see if it shows the number. 2. Awesome. Okay, so it has successfully read that. And that will be the value that we're going to be using in the for loop. So if we go back up, okay, now we are going to say this. I'm going to say for let I equal 0, I is less than pool db length, okay? And I'm just going to build that for loop, okay? Now, inside this, well, guess what I'm going to do? I am going to grab this entire section right here, right? I am going to grab this whole thing, cut it, right? And we are generating another one, okay? So now what is going to happen in this for loop is that the element is going to be re-rendered based on the pool db length. So if I had 2, it's going to iterate twice. So it should be able to generate 2 cards. But one thing that we're missing is that we have to replace this 0 because we were just testing with the first element. Instead of 0, it's going to be I because that's the amount that we are going to be iterating, okay? It's going to be I is the value inside the for loop. And then let's find I here, which replaces with I, replaces with I. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I save this, right? I'm going to delete this. I no longer need this. If I save this, I should be able to generate all those cards, okay? So I'm going to say here, I'm going to type now. So then it loads this function, generate pools, okay? So I'm going to say generate pools. Boom. So we are calling that. Let's see now. Let's see what happens. Here, and let me go ahead and save it. There we go. Oh, you even see the second one. Awesome. Okay, so now you see that we have 2 elements, 2 cards inside this box, okay? I am going to generate all the other ones because it's going to be a tedious and it's going to be very repetitive, okay? But you saw what I did. I nested. And then once I create all the elements, at the end, all I'm going to do, I am going to append. You remember, you are going to be appending from the deepest level in the HTML object. So in this case, I am going to appending the IDs to the grid, to the section, and then the section is going to be appended to the card. The card is going to be appended to the parent element, which is going to be the pool. Make sure that you have that, okay? It's very important for you to have this, okay? I'm going to show you how I did the separation, right? The HTML separation or the margins and all that, so everything is all well organized, okay? Don't worry, I'm going to show you right now. So to make things easier, what I ended up doing is I completed the whole HTML DOM creation. So I built all the grids, and we want to take a look and see how everything got fit in, right? So how everything got built. And I can show you the website right now. So if I go back onto the site, we ended up with the 2 cards, right? So the first card and the second card. This is all rendered because we have the pool DB file, okay? And we mentioned in the beginning, we did the first 2 grids, right? Grid 1, grid 2. Now I did 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I did the rest of them, and I'm going to show you how the configuration looks like. So ideally, we don't want to like build the entire thing on a video because the video is going to be very long to do the same repetitive task. Okay, so check this out. And I made sure that I break down each grid section according. Okay, so I'm going to be providing the link to all these files in the GitHub repository. I'm going to be providing the entire thing so that you can take a look yourself and then you can practice with this template. Okay, we did the first one. So we did card grid 1 and we did card grid 2. Okay, so those 2, we remember doing that. And then we appended the third one. So I'm going to show you why we ended up doing a third grid for the pool logo. So if you remember previously, the 2 logos were appended to grid 2. Okay, now I decided to do another grid just for the second logo. So then so we want to have everything in one row, right? And shown in this way. So we got the first grid, the second grid will be the first logo, and the third grid is going to be the second logo, okay? Then I have the other grid column. So I have the flex APY, which is the percentage rate in the staking pool. And then I have the stakings, pending reward, and total stake on pool balance, okay? So I'm going to have at the end a button that is going to open the model. So it's going to let the user do the staking, unstaking, and auto compound, okay? This one, I'm going to leave it for another video because we have to build the model in a very similar way, but there's a little bit of creativity to make it happen because the model is something that is not going to be shown instantaneously when we render. It's something that will be manually triggered by the end user if the user wants to open model, or in this case, pool. All right, so let me go over the grid. Let me show you right now. So we see 2, and we can see it's basically the same thing. We have the image logo, and then we are appending the logo to the grid 2, and I set the width to be 70, okay? Same with 3. 3 is going to be the second logo, width 70, appended to card grid 3, okay? Now the fourth grid, if we go back, it's the flex APY. This is the section that we saw in the card. Let me just show it right now. It's this one right here. So it's the flex APY. So we have created another grid, card grid, right? I'm gonna show you back. Card grid 4. We made the div, we set the styling, so it basically did the display grid, and that's how we can dynamically align everything in sequence, okay? And we have the title, so we ended up doing 2 H headings. Then in the first heading, in the first H6 header, which is flex title, I set the content to be flex APY. In the second heading 6 or header 6, we did the value, and that's what you saw, flex APY, and below you saw value 000. This is exactly what we have right there. This will be changed, obviously, because this will be updated, and you are going to see once we connect the Web3 aspect and we start interacting with ethers in the static HTML site, that value can be called dynamically and can be updated on the fly, okay? And I ended up appending card grid 4, append both the flex title and flex value, and that's how we ended up with those 2 string values right here. You can see flex APY and the percentage, okay? Same thing with the staking, no different. So this is another, this will be card grid 5, card grid 6, and card grid 7, okay? If we go back, let's take a look at that. Card grid 5, card grid 6, card grid 7. They're all basically the same. They're following the same pattern or the same structure as the fourth, which is the flex APY, okay? So you see H6, but now instead of H6, I did H6, A5. It's a bigger text size in the heading, in the content below, and then in the actual value. So the label for that particular column is going to be my staking, and the balance is going to be below, and I'm literally just following the same layout, okay? Why am I doing the ID portion? So let me explain to you what the ID is. The reason why I'm assigning an APY info and then the ID, right? The reason why I'm doing that, it's because I am going to be updating each column, okay? So I am going to be updating each value dynamically, okay? As a matter of fact, I realized that this has to be 1. Why it has to be 1 and not 0? Because this is a loop. It's just going to fetch the values per each pool, okay? So per each pool, we're going to be obtaining different values, which means that what I have to pass as the array is going to be I, right? Because then it's just going to retrieve the information for each array value or in each pool. If we're talking about staking pools, this will be each pool, okay? So let me go ahead and update this real quick. So this will be, instead of 0, this will be I. So whatever is the ID, right? I here as well. And I think one more, I think we're good, okay? Awesome. Why we have to set an ID, which is the only thing that is different here that you haven't seen in the video, is this ID portion. It's because this value, the total state, I, is identifier, is going to be a DOM element that I have to update. This is what I'm talking about. I need to re-update those values. The total stake in pool is just going to dynamically change, which means that I have to update this value in real time, which means that I will be doing this for loop every X amount of intervals. So every 5 seconds, I am going to refetch the values, and I'm going to be updating those values. I need to know where in the HTML DOM I need to pass those values, or I need to update that state, okay, to reflect the new values, okay? So that means that I have to identify that particular section that I can then dynamically update. Why it's the I? Because let's say we have 3 pools. Every time that the loop runs, right, we start with pool 0, so that means that APY info 0 will be the value that we are going to be passing for pool 0. Then the next time it runs the loop, then this will turn 1. Then it's going to turn 2. So now I have unique numbers or unique IDs that I can update per pool, okay? Don't worry, this will make a lot of sense once we get into the ethers part, when we start sending dynamic updates onto the DOM element, okay? So we are going to be making calls onto the blockchain, and from the blockchain, I am going to be obtaining values, and I am going to be updating those DOM elements on the fly, and you are going to see that. Again, this has to be very creative because we cannot install this on a server. This will be hosted in IPFS, which means that there's no running server instance. We have to be creative in the way that we are going to be updating this in real time. And then you can see it. Once we build the entire DOM structure, the entire HTML portion by building the DOM elements, I will be appending each card grid. So if I build 7, 8 card grids, and by the way, the 8th grid is where that button to open the pool will be. But like I mentioned earlier, I will be building a model that will be appended to that pool button. So that open pool button will open a model, and I decided to have a separate video to just build the model, which will be the last step, and we'll append that to card grid 8, and that will show the button in the card object, okay? So going back, now that I did that, remember we have a single card section, which means that we have a single card. Now I have to append every grid item that we have created, every card grid DOM element that we just created. I have to constantly, I have to put them in order, right? I have to be appending that in order. Card grid 1, because I want the first element. Let me just go back. First element, I want to make sure that that's the first element that we display. Then I will append card 2, card grid number 2, card grid number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Okay, so that's why we get that order of elements in the HTML page. Okay, it's very important that the append child is done in the correct order, so that we end up with the desired output. Okay, beautiful. And once we are done with the entire append child section, we appended all the card grids that we have built using DOM. Then finally, what? We append the card section onto the pool. That's when I build the entire HTML object for that card with all the information that I'm going to be displaying for that pool ID. I will be sending that to my main parent, or in this case, the actual HTML element that we have configured under the HTML page, okay, which is this right here. This is actually going to involve all the DOM elements that we are building under that div will be rendered during the client render event, okay? And that's it. Okay, so let's cut it here, and we have done a lot of good progress. I will be providing the link to this entire GitHub repo with all these files, all the settings, so that you can practice, okay? Like I always say, practice makes perfection, okay? On the next video, what we are going to do, we are going to invoke the CDN to connect ourselves to Web3 using our Web3 MetaMask wallet, and also to interact with Ethers.js so that we can start talking to the smart contract in the blockchain. Again, this will be all IPFS. No server is going to be installed. This site is going to be a Web3 site, completely running decentralized with IPFS. Alrighty, that's it for this video. I hope that you learned a lot in this one. This is very, very powerful stuff. If you do, leave me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.